Hey, so we are going to do some flashcards today, ma'am. Are you excited?
I am excited and I am ready.
Yay! Now, have you been using flashcards in your studying so far?
I have, yes.
And
Only
are
thing, go ahead.
I was going to say, are you finding them effective?
Yes, connecting it definitely is the hardest part. I know
Okay.
the definition for some things, but finding that certain category and what it's referring to is a little troubling sometimes.
Well, you are in luck because I'm hoping if I can show you how I do my flashcards and how I kind of look at things, it's going to help you with the definitions, but it's also going to help put stuff into order. And you'll notice what I have on the screen here is just a reminder of your exam topics. It's because you're going to need that when we start talking about categories. But really, the best way for you to understand what I'm talking about is for us to get right into it. So, what I've done is I've made some flashcard words that we're going to fill out together. Okay.
Alrighty, let's do it.
Perfect. So, the first word that I thought we should go over today is net lease. Now, if you're doing the flashcards and you're doing them like a traditional, whether it's digital or it is paper, if you're doing it, you see the word on the front. And what I've given you at the bottom are the 4 steps I want you to take with a flashcard. I mean, normally a flashcard is just, oh, here's the word, let me define it. But we're going to take these flashcards. I like to call it flashcards plus, but we're going to plus it out. We're going to make them more helpful so that you can really be studying because it's all about being able to retrieve. Right. I
Mm,
know a lot of times, and I was guilty of this for a long time. You look at the word on the front, you give it like 5.2 seconds, not even like a half a second. And you're like, I don't know it. And then you just flip it over and you cheat on the back. And then you keep going. You're like, oh, I did flashcards. But that really doesn't make you think. So we want to really dig down into that brain of yours. Okay.
okay.
So step one is to categorize. And what I mean by that is when you're going to categorize, you're going to decide what chapter or what topic it goes to. You'll see what I mean. Number two is we're going to define it, which is, a definition. The next step is that we are going to connect the words. We're going to kind of any other vocab word or topic or anything else that has to do with the word, we're going to write down. And then number four is we're going to make sure we understand the importance of the word in real estate. So it's kind of connected to connections, but you'll get what I'm saying. Like, why I want to make it real. I don't want this just to be a word in a vocab list. I want you to understand why your commission is making you learn the stupid word to begin with. So,
100%.
net lease. That was the front of the card. This is the back of the card. So when you're filling it out, it's exactly what you do. And you see, I've already put net lease on the top left. So step number one is we want to categorize the word. So what I mean by that is what chapter or what topic does net lease go to? Is it about finance? Are we talking about appraisals? Are we talking about transferring property and deeds? Like what chapter would you find the word net lease in?
Um, we have property management.
Yes, I would say property management. And in some states, I know, I don't know if your state, there may be just a landlord tenant chapter. It may be together, it may be separated, but you get the idea. And I
Mhm.
love that this is our first step because sometimes on the test, you may not recognize the vocab word 100%, but if you know it's a different chapter or a different topic, you can eliminate it. So now you're, doing a multiple guess with three answers
Mhm.
instead of four. You got a 33 and a third% chance of guessing right. So
Yes,
it may seem silly, but I think if you can say, oh, this word relates to this topic, it kind of gets you a quarter of the way to getting the definition. So step one. And then step two is define it. But when I say define it, I don't want you to give me the textbook version of what it says. I want you to define it in your own words as if you were explaining it to a 10-year-old.
okay.
So, do you know what a net lease is?
Yes. So a net lease, if I'm going to describe it to a 10-year-old, I would say that this is when the leasee is meant to pay everything plus the rental payment, right? So like they have to
Yeah.
pay extra things in order to complete the payment.
Yeah. So what are those extra things?
We have to pay for the property taxes.
And that's what we're going to put into the connect section because it's the definition, but I think it connects, property taxes.
Yes.
Anything else they might pay?
They pay for
Like maintenance.
maintenance. Yes.
They may pay for like if there's HOA or CC and let's just say HOA dues, things like this. That makes sense?
Yes. Would
Which
it
brought
also,
us, go
sorry, go
ahead.
ahead.
No, you
Uh,
go.
the triple net, is that something that we could
Well,
connect it with?
triple net,
Yeah.
I think that is great. And this is why.
That helped me remember it because it was like net, net, net. That means you're going to be paying more multiple things. It's just adding on to your payment.
Exactly. Triple net is more of a commercial term. So notice how I put in connect. It's basically the same, right?
Okay.
Depending on the different property management company and what state you're in. But yeah, triple net means it's a commercial lease and the tenant, because we know that lessee is the tenant,
Mm-hmm.
they're the ones that are going to be paying. Now, the other thing that I like to do with the connect section is, are there any other words that are kind of related or concepts that are related to net lease? And for example, what I mean by that is you do have the word gross lease. And sometimes what I like to do, and because I'm using our fancy dancy digitals, I might go ahead and highlight this so I remember that that's going to be a different vocab word.
Okay.
Do you know what a gross lease is?
A gross lease is the um whatever the it's an income to the property added on to the rental. So whatever the income is, or sorry, no, that's incorrect.
I think you're thinking of a percentage lease, which we'll do in a
Yeah.
second too. So the
Yes.
gross lease is the opposite.
Okay.
If in a net lease, the tenant is paying, in a gross lease, the landlord pays
Okay.
everything. And then I like to think of like an apartment rental. When you rent an apartment, are you the one paying for taxes or maintenance or anything like that? Yeah, it's a gross lease.
Okay.
Now, the
Deal.
other thing I think you were talking about was a percentage lease.
Yeah, it's
And
percentage of
that's
the gross income, right? Yeah.
there you go. You're going to pay your monthly base
Hmm.
plus a percentage of income. And
That
I'm going to
helps.
make that pink too, just so we know. And that's what I love about this is this idea. We didn't just cover net lease. We covered gross lease. We cover percentage leases. I'm hoping it kind of connects it and puts it into like, oh, this is why I'm learning it. Yeah,
Definitely. Yes.
cool. And then step four is going to be importance. Why do you think you have to learn about net lease? Like, when would this come up? Why is this something you should know? How could it stop you from getting paid? Like, why are we learning this word?
Um, hmm. I think that we're learning this word to, I mean, definitely differentiate the different leases
Hmm.
and the variety of leases that you can have. Um, but would you be able to explain it to
Yeah,
me a little
of
bit? Okay.
course. So I think, sometimes there's some words that are really, really important, like dual
Yeah.
agency. Boy, that's not one of the words we were doing today, but clearly you can't be a real estate agent and not know dual agency. The
Yes.
importance to something like dual agency is you need to know who you represent.
Yeah.
Well, if you're going to be in commercial,
Okay.
because I mean, this could be in residential too, but if you are in commercial, this becomes very important because this changes what your client is paying.
Mm-hmm.
This affects the client's ability to have a lease. And really, what I think is important is I call it general knowledge. And what I mean by general knowledge is, let's say you go to the ear, nose, throat doctor, and
Hmm.
they tell you, and I use this example a lot, so you might have heard it, but they tell you, oh, it looks like you just have the, normal sinus infection. And then you're like, hey, but doc, my foot is oozing this pus. Now, even though it's an ear, nose, throat doctor, how much confidence would you have in your doctor if they were like, well, I don't know if feet are supposed to ooze or not? Sir, you went to medical school. I'm going to need you
Yeah.
to know that feet aren't supposed to ooze. And
Yeah.
I say that with real estate a lot too. If you have a buyer client and that buyer client is like, hey, I'm moving from out of state. Not only do I want to buy a house, but I want to move my business. You may not do commercial, but you should be able to at least ask that person a couple questions like, oh, well, are you looking to lease? Are you looking to buy? What kind of
Yeah.
leases were you looking for? Not because you're going to find that answer, but in a perfect world, you're going to refer that
Yeah.
client. And if you can do just a little bit of asking some questions when you send it to that referral agent, that's how you earn that referral. People want to get referrals from you, and in exchange, they're going to send you referrals. So
Mhm.
having that base knowledge and being able to kind of explain to somebody or at least talk the lingo makes them feel confident looking at you like a real estate professional, and it's going to
Mhm.
help you with your referral game because you might send a referral out, but there are more people buying houses than there are buying commercial real estate.
Yeah.
So if you can have that great relationship with a commercial real estate agent, that's more referrals, you get the point.
Deal. Kind of opens up a door.
It kind of opens up the door. So
Hmm.
that's our first one, net lease. It's not as quick as a normal flashcard, but we get so much more learning out of it, I
Yeah,
think.
definitely. It definitely helped me put it into like a secure category.
Okay, I love that. All right, let's do our next word. Let's see, what did I choose? Ooh, net operating income. NOI, net operating income. So, can you tell me what category it belongs in? Where did you see it? And there's actually two categories you might see this in. I'll take either one.
I definitely property management one,
Yes.
but I want to guess the second one. I'm gonna go with ownership of property.
No, not ownership of
Okay.
property, but it's going to also be appraisal
Appraisal.
or
Okay.
valuation.
Okay.
And I'm going to explain why when we get to the connect.
Deal. Mhm.
So, our next step is define it. And you may or you may not be able to
Yeah.
define NOI. Do you need me to explain it to you, or do you think you got it?
Is it I'm gonna take a guess just to give my brain a little bit of a challenge. So net
Mhm.
operating income, is it the overall income that you received after the purchase of a property? Or is that
Well, you're close. It's not
okay?
about the purchase of the property. This
Okay.
is about rental income that comes in annually
Okay.
after paying expenses. So
Okay. I was
it's,
almost there.
yeah, it's annual expenses after. Oh, I didn't mean to say, okay. Helps if I say it right and write it right. Annual income after expenses. So it's all about being realistic about how much money you bring in. For example, let's say you were 8 years old and you decided to start your own lemonade stand and you spent $50 in supplies. At the end of the day, you made $200. Like you brought $200 in sales.
Mhm.
Is $200 your profit or your income? Like, is that money you made? Is it a full $200? No,
Mhm. Probably was
because
one
you had
person. Yeah.
$50 in expenses. At
Yeah.
a very, very base level, that is net operating income,
Okay. Deal.
right? And one of the things I'm going to show you, and I wasn't planning on pulling up, but I will, is understanding net operating income. The state that I'm in, which is North Carolina, we have in our mm. If I can find it, here it is. In our book, like we have a state manual for brokers. Like we're a broker only state. So once you become an agent, all of us have access to this manual. And this comes out of one of our manual pages on property management. And it's an operating budget. And right, the reason I'm showing it is because at the bottom of this operating budget, what do you know? Net
Wow.
operating income.
Hmm.
And this is how it relates to property management. When you're a property manager, what you do, it's a budget. Now, as much as my dad keeps telling me I should make a budget before I spend the money, truth be told, budgets should be made before you spend the money.
Yes.
Right? So, having said that, one of your jobs as a property manager is to say to your owner, hey, here's what I think your money is going to look like this year. So, what we're looking at is we're saying, okay, how much general income are you making? Like we were talking about, hey, you made $200 with the lemonade stand.
Hmm.
That's cool. But when we look at an NOI, the first thing we want to find is our gross potential income. And what we're saying is if all of these units was rented for every day, every month of the year, and nobody was late, it was never empty, this is the potential we could make, right?
Yeah.
Having said that, we know that that's not very realistic. You're going to have some vacancies.
Yep.
So you're not going to actually make 5% of that. And maybe you have something like vending machines or laundry. So this is your potential, but really, effectively, you can probably expect just an income, money coming in, $1,395,900. That's a budget. I mean, nothing ever goes to budget.
Mm-mm.
But then your job as a property manager is to say, oh, dude, you got expenses. We got expenses. You got to pay me first and foremost, like pay me. And then you're going to
Yeah.
have property taxes. You have maintenance, people you need to pay. We got to advertise you utilities. I mean, legal services. You get all that. So all that together, they're saying, yeah, you're going to probably have $501,000 in expenses. So although you're bringing in 1395,900, so 1,395,900, you're probably going to spend 501,000 of that on expenses. So your net operating income is this.
Deal. Okay.
Because it sounds really good to say, oh, you could bring in $1.5 million almost. But the truth is, you're probably only going to bring in $894,000 ish.
Hmm.
This is the big ish. It's a budget. Does that help seeing that?
100%. It
Cool.
definitely does. Hmm.
So, what I would do is in the next section, section 3 here, I would say this connects to a
Operating.
operating budget.
Hmm.
And we learned other words like potential gross income
Hmm.
versus effective gross income. And do those make sense to you now?
Yes. Hmm.
Yay! And it kind of connects it. And why do we
Oh,
learn
yeah.
this? Why is this important? Because it's your job
Yeah.
as a property manager.
You have to understand what expenses that you're going through.
Yeah. But guess what? There's another reason why this is important too. And I'll choose a different color to talk about this. Remember, we'll use this orangey color. I said it also relates to appraisal or valuation.
Oh, ad
How is
valorem.
that? Well, if I were
Uh,
to ask, oh, do you know?
is it ad valorem? Is it that's it?
No.
Okay.
If I asked you the 3 ways an appraiser comes up with value, what would you tell me?
Location,
N-
right?
No, I'm thinking more like think of it as the market data approach.
Oh, okay. Cost approach,
There you go.
and then the capitalization approach.
The capitalization, if I can spell it, approach.
Holy crud, that just opened up so many things. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that connected to that one.
Right? Because the capitalization approach is also known as, because this is the one we want, it's
Income.
AKA
Oh,
called
income
the
approach.
income approach. And what word are we talking about?
Income, net operating income.
And so when you're doing the capitalization or the income approach, if you take your NOI and you divide it by the cap rate, that's how they find value.
Boom. Drop the
Because
mic.
what we're saying is, you know what? If this was your property and you
Mhm.
made almost $900,000 a year in income, if you sell it to me for $900,000, that's just compensating you for 1 year. We got to
Mhm.
sell it for more money than that. Like you're going to sell it a lot higher. So then you have that capitalization rate, which is going to, anyway, the number gets bigger, but we're not going to just sell it for $900,000. That's how appraisers come up with value. And in
Okay.
order to come up with that value, they need a net operating income and they need to know what it spends. And then if you really want to connect it, did you learn about uh what is the word I'm looking for? It's a gross income multipliers and GR gross
Gross
rental.
rent. Mm-hmm.
Now different states have different in different areas have different definitions, but let me explain the difference. We saw with an NOI, you had to know all those numbers. You had to know expenses. You had to know, vacancies. You had to know all those things. A GRM and a GIM are simplified ways of coming up with value so the appraiser doesn't have to know all those numbers.
Got it.
Did that kind of put some stuff together for you?
Yeah, definitely.
I love it when that happens.
Now, just out of curiosity, because I know this was a troubling thing for me, how do I know which category each item or each term is referring to?
That is a great question. So, what I would suggest is use your textbook. So, and I know everybody has a different type of textbook, but I'm really hoping is that you have a textbook that is going to have something like, oh, and I know I have a picture of it somewhere. That's going to be in study guides here.
Ah,
So this just happens to be a Wisconsin book. Like when I was writing a CE, I like to learn stuff from other states. But this was Unit 1, ownership of real property. And you see how there's a list of vocab words.
mhm.
So if you have a textbook, one of the best ways to see where the vocab word goes, or if you're confused, is to look at that list, to look at that list that's provided in the book. Now, I highly, highly suggest that you get a textbook if you don't have one, or
Mhm.
if you just don't have the funds, you don't have a textbook. What you can do is you'll go through and after you define it, you might need to define it first. Once you define it, so operating income, it's income after other expenses. If I were to further define it, you might be talking about investment properties or something. But hopefully, when you define it or you connect it,
Mhm.
one of those might go, I think I kind of talked about this in the appraisal chapter. And
Yeah.
hopefully that will kind of link. So it's what chapter would I find this word in? Or when I was taking the course, what section of the course did my instructor talk about this word? So much easier if you have a textbook that has
Mhm.
that list. But if you don't have a textbook that has that list, then that's how you can do it. And also, I know you said you were watching my 5 hour critical vocab. That is
Uh-huh.
done by section. So if it's a word that's in that 5 hour video, you would know what category it's in as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh, you are so welcome. All right. NOI, that was our word. Let's go to our next one. Ooh, I like this one because it's Latin, and I took Latin in high school for many years. Caveat emptor.
Whew.
Do you know what it means? Well, excuse me, let's start with, do you know the category?
Property ownership?
I'm going to say property ownership. And I'm gonna, oh, we'll keep this color. But I also think has to do, like, usually I end up teaching this when I talk about agency in a very weird way.
Okay.
And I'll talk about why I put it there. So, can you define caveat emptor? Do you know what it means?
A transferring a transfer of property of some sort, maybe?
It's actually Latin for let the
The buyer
buyer
be, or let the buyer do. Ah, I just looked over
beware.
this one.
That's okay. And here, okay, why? There's some letters. It
It's the
doesn't
B
like
and the D.
it is the B and the D that it doesn't. I'm like, I think it's because this is a thing called Good Notes. So if you have a computer or a pad, you can use Good Notes. One of the really great functions of this is if you do this right, let's see, when you scribble, it makes the word go away.
I love
So if
that.
I write hi and then I'm like, oh no, I didn't want that word, I can scribble on it. So something about how I make my B's and my D's thinks I'm scribbling.
Oh my gosh, how funny.
I mean, I love the scribble function, but I'm like, some of us have bad handwriting, okay?
That's how
Like,
mine, it would probably do the scribble and it would all erase everything.
well, I do love it though. It's like an app that will cost you something like $20, but it's so helpful for taking notes, especially if you're like me and you have like paper notebooks everywhere. This way, it connects to my computer and my iPad, so I
Oh,
can have
cool.
access, and my phone, so I can have access to my notes at any time.
Oh, heck
Love
yeah.
it. All right. And if you do end up getting the good notes, then you can come to me because you're doing this with me. I will give you
Yes.
these flashcard templates for free. So I
Heck
don't
yeah.
want you to have to remake it. If you want these, usually I sell them, but I will give it to you for free because you're amazing and you're doing this with me.
Oh, thank you. You're
And
amazing.
either way, it's actually a PDF, so I can send it to you either way. So I will definitely do that to you.
Thank you.
All right. So it means let the buyer beware. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to connect this for you.
Okay.
Um, because you said property ownership and I said agency. Let the buyer beware talks about, hey, buyer, when you are buying the property, it is your job to figure out what's wrong with it. Think of used cars. If you bought a
Okay.
used car off of somebody on Facebook or Craigslist or something, you know full well if you're buying from an individual, whose job is it to get it inspected to see the condition?
It's our,
Yours. Yeah,
yeah, mine. Yeah, sorry.
that's okay.
Clearly, we're buying the
That's
car together.
Yeah, yeah. We are buying the car together. We're gonna get a nice car too. I don't know. What will we get? No, I will go on
Not
a
a
swirl. We're not gonna talk
Mercedes.
about what we're gonna get, but it's our job. If we want to buy
Okay.
that car, we have to take it to an inspector, the mechanic, and see what's wrong with
Mhm.
it, and drive it. What do we like? That's the same thing for houses. It's let the buyer beware.
Okay.
And the reason, so when you said property ownership, I would say, yeah, that's true because before you get ready to own it, you're going to want to figure out what's wrong with it.
Yeah.
The reason I teach it in agency is because part of your job as an agent is going to be understanding what your state says about what has to be disclosed. So, what this connects to
Oh,
is property disclosures
material facts
and material facts.
and Latin defects.
Yep. And then you've got Latin or latent defects.
Latent. Yes, thank you.
That's okay. I've heard it said both way, which is also the opposite of that is patent defects.
Mm.
So defects, okay. ECTS. I can spell. Do you know the difference between latent defects and patent defects?
No, I do not.
Latent is hidden,
Okay.
hidden, and patent is visible. And
Okay.
the silly way I remember this? Do you remember being little girl, and whether you got dressed up for like a wedding or Easter Sunday or something, you'd have those shiny little fake leather shoes and they'd be all shiny and everybody, and you'd want to
Yeah.
show them off. Those are called patent leather.
Oh,
And
interesting.
I don't know why it's called patent leather, but whenever I think of patent, I think of just wanting to show off my shoe, my
Oh,
shiny shoes. So patent defects are the ones that are shown off, the ones that you can see that people can find.
cool.
Latent is the opposite. Now what is going to matter, and this is kind of where your state, when you're doing these flashcards for yourself, you're going to
Hmm.
have to know the difference between, okay, what is it that I have to tell? Like, I think in most states, all agents have to tell any type of, patent, material facts, defects, anything like that. But other states vary in what the seller has to share. So me, I'm in North Carolina, and we're one of the true caveat emptor states. In my state, a seller doesn't have to share anything. They can't lie about it. They can't paint over the water damage and be like, it's fine. But sellers don't have to share anything in my state. Other
Okay.
states like California, you have to share basically everything you know about the
Your
house.
property. Hmm.
So, what state are you in?
Colorado.
And do you know what in Colorado, what do
I
you all have to share
We have to share
as a seller? Sorry, what do sellers have to share?
material facts,
And what do you all consider material facts?
zoning changes,
Okay.
if there's like some sort of asbestos in the property or say mold on site.
Do they have to share if they know any defects?
No.
Okay. So, what I would say here is because
I
you
gotta
kind of
double
give,
check on that one.
yep. And so we're going to put a question mark there, and then we're going to highlight, and that's going to tell you to come back to it
Yeah,
and look it up.
cool. Heck yeah.
Right. So the connecting, and now that's why I teach it in agency because in my textbook, it just so happens talking about your job as an agent is to share material facts. And then they kind of loop that together with, well, let's talk about the fact that, what sellers do and don't have to disclose, to
Just
disclose and things like that. So
yeah.
that kind of help.
Yes.
Yay. And we'll
Mhm.
make a note to go back to that when we study later. Oh, speaking of material facts, we have radon. So, do you know what radon is? Or do you,
It
well,
is
before you say that, I'm going to say we're going to put this under material facts.
okay. There you go.
All right. What is radon?
Radon is a type of gas that causes lung cancer and other lung diseases that can be a harm to humans.
All right. It's a gas that causes lung cancer.
Hmm.
Now, being a teacher, I'm going to say what I always like to think of is I know on TV you've seen those things that are it- well, you've seen commercials that are like, have you been, hurt by work or, you have a
Yeah.
workman's comp. I always think of radon and I also think of asbestos,
Uh-huh.
right? Because they cause lung cancer. But radon, if I were to relate it to real estate, I would say the word I like to think about is basements.
Okay.
And the reason I say basements, and I'll draw a little picture here. Let's say this is the house, but this is ground level. So these are your steps up, right? Radon is a naturally occurring gas that seeps in through the walls. And people sometimes look at me like I'm crazy. Like, what do you mean it seeps in through the walls? So I like to say it's like a fart. You fart in your pants, but it seeps through the seat of your pants, and the rest of us can smell it.
Yeah.
Think of radon and the walls being that way.
Oh my God, I will never forget that.
So
That's
it's a
amazing.
naturally occurring gas. It comes from uranium in the ground that's breaking down. And this
Okay.
happens in patches all around the United States. So every house could test differently, even if they're next door neighbors. But
Yeah.
what happens is that radon builds up. And the problem is that it is odorless, it's invisible. It's what else could you can see it, you can, smell it. You don't know it's there. And so you're
Yeah.
breathing in all this radon, and radon is at one point was the second leading cause of um lung cancer in the United States. I read that somewhere and it always stuck with me because I grew up in a house with a basement. So if you have a basement and you don't air it out,
Yeah.
then that radon keeps building up, which also relates to how you fix it is to put in fans. This is my fan. It's also a flower. Leave me alone. But what will happen is that that fan pulls air up and then out. So it's
Mm.
a ventilation system. And so what it does is it pulls, if, unless you have, like if you have a walkout basement, you can open the doors and windows. But if
Yeah.
you don't have doors or windows, you put in a fan system, a ventilation system that takes the air from downstairs and pulls it out so that you don't have this buildup of radon.
Got it. Okay.
And you can do radon testing. So, why is this important? Why do you think you need to know about radon?
You need to know about radon. I mean, to protect yourself from those gases, I would say.
It's going to be part of the buyer inspection process, right? Yourself too. Now, yes,
Yeah.
regardless of when you pass this test and if you go into real estate, the next
Hmm.
time you buy a house, if there's a basement, I would want you to ask about radon. But it also
Definitely.
makes it one of the things that buyers are going to be wanting to test for and that you should be asking. You ask the buyer, hey, do you want a radon test? And then they're going to come back and say yes or no. Now,
Hmm.
if we're talking about terms you need to know with that, um, it's also going to, you want to remember 4.0.
Okay.
And so, what the EPA has said is when you get a test, if the test comes back and it's 4.0 or more picocuries per liter of air, I have no clue to what a picocurie per liter of air is. I have no idea how much stink that is. Like I got
Yeah.
nothing. But if that reading comes back and it's 4.0, then they strongly suggest you remediate. Some
Yeah.
states will have laws or rules, or your contract might have something to say about it. But that's the magic number from the EPA. Now, the EPA is not saying, oh, if it's 3.7, you're fine. They're just saying at 4.0, yeah, you want to get this air up and out.
Yeah. You want to chop, chop, chop.
All right. Next word we have here is, oh, kind of related is carbon monoxide. But I'm going to go backwards for a second because one of the words that came up that I said was asbestos.
Oh, yeah.
So I want
I
to
think
cover
those
that.
three all, yeah.
So asbestos, well, do you know what asbestos is?
It is the insulation between the walls, and it can be also in the your attic as well. It's kind of, I think of fiberglass. That just kind of helps me relate because I was like asbestos. What? So it just helps me categorize that one. Also can lead to cancer as well.
You remember those commercials? If your loved one has died from mesothelioma or has been
Yes.
mesothelioma, that's what I think of. Mhm.
Oh my
And
goodness.
it also causes lung cancer. And yeah, it's the same thing. It's one of those things you don't want to be breathing it in.
Mm-mm.
Good
Yeah.
job.
Thank you.
Carbon monoxide is kind of in that same kind of ick family.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put it into, I'm going to say, and I'm going to call this an environmental
Material fact? Or
hazard. I mean, it's not really
okay, that's fair.
environmental, but it's, you know what, I'm going to call it just a hazard. How about that? I'm going to say it's an
I think we wrote something down that would
in material facts, maybe. Because this, once again, even though I'm jumping out of order, its importance is buyer inspections. This is something that is a hazard to buyers. And when they get inspections, they're going to want to know about it. So, do you know what carbon monoxide is?
it's a type of gas that
Yes.
is it odorless as well? I think
Um,
it is, right?
yeah,
I
it's for the
think
most part, it's odorless.
okay. You also have those detectors in your home as well that will signal. I don't know if you need to know that one, but yeah.
Did I spell detectors? Detectors. I don't know. But
Detect
you
bullets.
get carbon monoxide detectors. Do you know where it comes from?
Um, Your radiator?
What comes from gas appliances?
Gas appliance. Okay.
So when we're talking about gas, I'm talking about the state. Like it's a gas. It's not a liquid. It's not a solid, it's a gas. But then I'm
Yeah.
talking about like gas, like what you use to heat your home or
Yeah.
what you use for your stove, right?
Okay.
So when
Yeah.
you have gas appliances, or I mean, it's sad when you see people that are decide to, or not decide, but are suffering and they um suicide. They put them,
Yeah.
they put themselves in the garage with the car running. You die from
Yeah.
carbon monoxide poisoning. So
Mm,
anytime you have gas appliances or anything like that, whether it's the oven, whether it's heat, the heat source,
yeah.
it's a odorless gas that's heavy and it builds up and eventually it cuts out the oxygen and it kills you.
Yeah. Okay.
But that's why you have detectors. The same way you have smoke detectors, you can have carbon monoxide detectors.
Hmm.
Right? Now, one thing I
Yeah.
always like to remind people is you can buy these as two separate things, but I would encourage you to have, well, you can buy them as one together. I would encourage you to buy them as two separate. One, because carbon monoxide is heavy, so it sinks to the floor and it builds up, and then
Okay.
it hits the detector and then it goes off. Smoke detectors are up because we know
Hmm.
smoke
Right.
rises. So
Yeah.
I always tell people, yeah, you can build it in as one, but here are your choices. If you do the smoke detector, carbon monoxide detector, and you put it at the floor, then it's not going to detect the smoke. But if you put the carbon monoxide detector and the smoke detector up, then you're not going to, you're going to be dead
Yeah.
before the alarm goes off. So that's a problem.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. And I think
Okay.
we already know what this connects to. We're this connects,
Yeah. Inspections.
inspections, uh, beware
Oh,
category.
yeah. Yeah.
Mhm. And part of that caveat emptor,
Mm-hmm. Okay. And tour. Let
because
the
it could
buyer
be
beware.
the seller has to share it if they know about it, but maybe the seller hasn't had it in, looked for it lately. It
Yeah.
may be something the buyer wants to look into before they buy the property.
Mm-hmm.
Yay.
Cool. Heck yeah.
Hey, ad valorem taxes, you said this word earlier,
I
and it's
did.
also Latin. This is another Latin term.
Yeah.
Do you know what it means in Latin?
Um, to add value
Well, it
or the
means
value of
according
according to value. Okay.
to value. So I'm going to call this category taxes.
Mm-hmm.
It falls in the taxes. So according to value, and do you know, if we're talking about a definition, how your state comes up with the value of a property for real estate taxes? Like, do you all use mills or do you use a dollar amount per 100?
Dollar amount per 100.
All right. So that's what you need to know. It's going to be some dollar amount per 100 of value. So let's connect it.
Okay.
Yes, you may use a dollar amount per 100, and that's based on the assessed value. And that's the word I want to make sure you know. You do know what assessed value means, correct?
Market value.
Well, see, that's what I wanted to ask. It's
Okay.
actually different. So assessed value is for taxes,
Okay.
and I'm just going to root versus market value, which is,
Income taxes.
well, no, market value is just the price if you put it on the market. So what I mean by that is in my state, and I'm just going to use my state,
Mm-hmm.
houses, like if you put your house on the market, it could be worth $700,000 today. But the way my state works, my state, I don't know about Colorado, is the value for taxes only changes once every 8 years. So your house might be worth $700,000 today, but we're using a tax value of 500,000 from 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Our assessed value is different than sometimes than the market value. And so
Okay.
one of the things I would encourage you to look up is how is assessed value found in Colorado.
Yeah, okay. I can definitely.
So your assessed value and your market value could be the same, but
Mhm.
sometimes you'll have math problems. And the math problems, it'll say assessed, and I call it the ask value is, 45% of market value. Sometimes you'll have math problems that say that. Sometimes it'll be set, like in my state, where here's the price for the next 8 years.
Mhm.
Market value and assessed value don't necessarily have to be the same.
Okay.
Now, the other thing is that in other states, which is green, they use mills. Have you seen or heard this word before?
Yes.
What do
I
you know about it?
I don't really know too much.
That's okay. So, a mill, well, let's take it backwards. In
Okay.
your state, if you had an assessed value, that's an N. I don't know why I'm trying to write an N. If you had an assessed value of $200,000 and the tax rate was $2, that means you need to, number one, know how many 100s are in $200,000. So we're going to do my nifty math I learned a long time ago. Woot, 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 woot. There are 2,000. Oh, and then put dollar sign there. There are 2,000 100s and $200,000. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And we're
Hmm.
going to pay $2. So we're going to pay $2 2,000 times. So that's $4,000 would be the tax bill.
Okay.
That, yes, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, in a state that uses mills, they'll quote it, they'll say, "Oh, it has a value, an assessed value of, I don't know, 400,000, and you're paying, I don't know, 9 mils and a tax rate. That 9 mils is the rate.
Okay.
And a mil is worth 1/10 of 1 cent.
Okay.
So really what you're going to do is you're going to take this 400,000, divide it this time by 1,000, and then multiply by 9.
Okay.
That's just the short because I don't want to go into too much math, but just remember what you do is per 100. So we
Yeah,
divide it by 100. And in a mil, you're gonna divide by 1,000.
okay. So it's just adding another
You just add another zero.
zero. Okay.
Mhm.
Alrighty. Cool.
Yay, we learned a little something.
Learn a little something.
Now, if I were to connect this to one other thing, I would say, remember, taxes are are part of Pete. Does that, Pete, does that sound familiar to you?
Yes, the police. I mean, it has police powers. It's cheat, eminent domain, and taxes.
And I'm not going to write it all out, but yes,
Yeah.
so
Yes.
that's what I mean by connected or why it's important. Now, we
Yeah.
didn't talk exactly why it's important, but I think you have to pay your taxes. So that's why it's important.
Yeah. Period.
Yeah, period, period. Yeah, the IRS wants to talk to you if you don't
Yeah.
know it. Ooh, here's a good one. Liens.
Means.
Do you know what category we would put this into?
Let's oh, I so liens have to do with money. So let me break this down. Liens have to do with money, also with encumbrances. So I'm gonna go with land use, land use and regulations.
Well, it's not going to necessarily be land use regulations, although it does have to do with land. It's going to talk about ownership.
Okay.
I'm going to put it under ownership because a lien, well, you tell me what a definition of a lien is, and I'll tell you if you're right.
Lien equals money. It goes into different categories of like specifics or general. But it's money that you owe.
Okay, that's what I love. It is money owed by a property or a person. So you said it. There are specific liens and there are general liens. A specific lien is against a property,
Hmm.
like a piece of real property, and a general lien is against a person. So a specific lien is like your ad valorem taxes.
Yeah.
If you have four houses and you don't pay the taxes on one of them, they can only sell the one that you didn't pay taxes on
Yes.
because it's against that one specific property. But if you don't pay the IRS, that's a lien against you and they can sell everything you own,
Hmm.
right? So liens, yes, they do come in specific or general types, but a lien is a charge or money owed by a person or a property.
Deal. Okay.
So we
Yeah.
know there's specific liens. Can you name another type of specific lien? Besides, because I said
Um,
taxes, these were your ad valorem.
Involuntary liens or voluntary liens
Well, you do have involuntary versus voluntary.
or judgment lien.
Oh, a judgment lien is going to be a personal lien.
Okay.
So ad valorem taxes, mechanics liens,
Oh yeah, I guess
and what's the other one? Mortgage liens.
deal. Okay.
Like, do you get how those are all against a property? You could have four different properties and four different mortgages, but the mortgage you got for property A only attaches to property A.
Got it. What about oh you said taxes, like tax liens?
Yep, of ad valorem
Okay,
tax liens.
cool. Heck yeah. Okay.
Right. And then you said like judgment liens. Well, a judgment lien is a general lien because it's against you. You didn't pay something, and now there's a judgment against you. Now, if
Heard.
we're talking about a mechanics lien, that's the house got an improvement. The house was painted. You got an architect come in, they fixed a wall and the house had work and now the house owes money. It's
Okay.
against the property. A judgment lien is against you, like when you don't pay the IRS.
Yeah.
Now, you did say voluntary versus involuntary. And that has to do with did you sign up for the lien or did you not sign up for the lien? So a mortgage lien you signed up for, that's voluntary,
Mm-hmm.
right? Ad valorem taxes you did not sign up for, it's involuntary.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So it's like, is it something you
Yes.
asked for, or is it just it's something you didn't ask for? That's
I like
voluntary
the
or
way you put that.
involuntary.
I like the way you put that. That
Okay.
makes sense. Yeah, it's either you asked for it or you didn't.
Mhm. Now, why are liens important?
To control ownership
It's
or
not
the
to
use of it?
control it, but what do you do? Okay, so we know a buyer, let's say you're buying a house.
Yeah.
You're going to hire an attorney or a escrow agent and somebody is going to do it's going to go to the Register of Deeds and they're going to do
Title search.
yeah, and that title
Cool.
search might find,
Clear and free title.
well, you want free and clear title, but
Okay.
if they find liens, guess what you don't get?
No, you don't get clear and free.
Yeah. So as the buyer, you would have signed a contract that said, hey, I want this house to have free and clear title. So you
Okay.
hire somebody to go do a title search to make sure you're getting free and clear title. But if they do the title search and they find a mechanics lien,
Mm-hmm.
then the escrow agent or the attorney is going to make sure that mechanics lien gets removed before they transfer title to you.
Yeah,
Make sense? And if
makes
the
sense.
title can't be removed, did you want, I'm not if the title, if the lien can't be removed, I don't know what type of lien it would be, but if the lien could not be removed, did you still want to buy the house?
No.
So it's part of that whole process.
Negotiation, yeah.
Yes, your
Okay.
contract in your state probably says, hey, I want title from a general warranty deed or a warranty deed that's going to give fee simple, absolute title, free of any encumbrances, including liens, you know, and that's why
Okay.
you get that title search because you want clear title
Awesome. That makes sense.
to kind of put it into like what liens are and why you're learning about them.
Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't have clean title and the buyer can't buy, guess who's not getting paid?
Me.
That's right. So all of a sudden, liens, and it's a good
Mm-hmm.
idea when you talk to a seller in a listing appointment, like, hey, are there any liens that we should know about that, need to be cleared before we try to sell your house? And if
Mm-hmm.
we totally want to connect this, if we are going to be absolutely amazing,
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say something. I was gonna say something that was so amazing, that was so cool. What did I was gonna say? Oh, I was gonna say, look, you're getting a house. It's a type of encumbrance. Crap, man, I'm getting old. I need to drink more orange juice. It'll come back to me. But I was gonna connect. Oh, I know what it was. Deeds.
Oh, there you go.
Did you know this connects to deeds? Because if there's a mechanics deed, you remove it, mechanics lien, using a quit
General warranty.
claim.
Oh, quick claim deed. That's right. That's the
See, it all ties together. And that's why sometimes I'll tell y'all, think of it like a puzzle. Real estate is
yeah.
like a puzzle. And just like a puzzle piece has different nooks and crannies and fits from like 3 or 4 sides, so does every single vocab word. We
For
might
sure.
have started talking about liens, but I can directly connect liens to quitclaim deeds.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Does that
That's
help?
awesome. Yes, that helps a lot. That
Yeah.
helps a lot. Even though,
All right.
yeah, that's good. Mm-hmm.
Good, 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 good. And I did say encumbrances up here because a lien
Yes.
is a type of encumbrance.
It disrupts their ownership in a way, kind of.
Yes, that's the
Yeah.
definition of an encumbrance is something that is affecting the ownership. It's a good
Yeah.
way to put it.
Okay. Cool.
Oh,
Like,
look
oh,
at
we
you
already got.
being a genius. Hey, encumbrances. So we're gonna put this under ownership
Ownership.
again.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you're gonna say something that affects ownership.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say it. This reminds me of the bundle of rights
Yes.
because if it affects ownership, it affects the bundle of rights,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we know
Definitely.
that's deep sea. We're not going to get into it right now,
Yeah.
but deep sea. All right. Encumbrances. One type of encumbrance types are liens. What's another type of encumbrance?
An encroachment
Yeah.
and
Easements.
easements. Yes, easements. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Appurtenances.
Well,
Appurtenances.
appurtenance
There's
could
something
be
different. Yeah.
no, appurtenance is one of those words. It just means it's something that runs with the land. So you
Yes.
could have an appurtenant easement. If you have CC&Rs or restrictive covenants, those would be
Yeah.
appurtenant. So there you
Okay.
go.
Alrighty.
Um,
Cool.
I mean, and the importance of encumbrances is just, I mean, look at that list.
Yeah.
All of those things are going to affect your ownership. I mean, our job as a real estate agent is to help people, if we're talking in sales, help people buy or sell title. And
Mhm.
all of that could be affected if there are negative encumbrances.
Yeah.
Yay.
Cool. Heck yeah. There's like it's the tree and then it has all its little leaves and
It
branches. It just
does.
keeps on growing.
And sometimes you'll hear me talk about, and I'll choose a different color for this. I'll tell people, mind map. What these flashcards are doing is forcing you to mind map. Because if I was
Mhm.
mind mapping or sketch noting my notes, which is a way to do it, I would say, hey, here's an encumbrance. And that's my first word. And then I would say, oh, we got liens. Over here we've got CC&Rs. Over here we've got easements. And over here we've got encroachments. And then with my liens, I would say, oh, there's um you got specific, and then you've got general, but we could also talk about them as voluntary versus involuntary. And then we could talk about easements, could be
Your type of easement.
appurtenant, or it
Mhm.
could be an easement in gross. And if it's an easement in gross, it could be utilities, or it could be personal. Like mind mapping. I'm kind of
Yeah.
the flashcards help you mind map because it's asking you what does it connect to? Why is it important? What
Hmm.
section? Northeast corner of the mind map, ownership, the southwest corner of the mind map of,
Yeah,
appraisal. I think I could mind map. If I had unlimited time, I could probably mind map this entire class.
probably. It'd be impressive too.
It would, I mean, that sounds like something I should start is like when I can't sleep at night and use like color coding, mind mapping,
Yeah,
like, oh my God, all the vocab words. Oh my God. Oh my
very
God.
impressive.
It would be, now I'm kind of want to do it just because.
You
So,
should. I
all
vote
right.
yes.
Does that kind of help you with the
Yes,
encumbrances and where it, great. Let's see what we
100%.
got. Hey,
There we go.
we talked about
Uh,
deeds a second ago, but here's a warranty deed. So I think this falls in the
Transfer
transfer
property.
of property.
Hmm.
Can you tell me what a warranty deed is?
Warranty deed is it's a piece of paper that that goes through your clean free title. So it's basically saying, I'm going to give you this property. Here are the qualifications of it. Is pretty much kind of.
You are right. It is my bees. It's my bees.
It's the bees.
And I'm gonna say it's your and
Because
the
this,
bees.
yeah, because this is a general warranty deed. So this is the best type of deed. Yeah, like you're saying,
Yes.
it has the most security on the deed.
Mm-hmm. And the reason we say it's the best because we have to go, it's versus. So you have the general versus the like
Special.
special
Hmm.
versus the quick
But
claim. Now, those are the three big ones. You could also have a
bargain deed. Yeah, I've
bargain and
came
sale
across that one.
deed. And
Yeah.
then, I mean, there's also sheriff's deeds, and I mean, there's all sorts of deeds out there.
Yeah.
So, in general, we know a deed is the document that transfers title.
Property. Yes.
Do you know the difference between a general warranty deed and all the other ones?
Yes. So general is on the entire property itself.
Hmm.
Special is limited to a specific piece of the property.
Well, now that's where I'm gonna kind of change it a little bit for you.
Okay.
So a general warranty, you get promises or what we call covenants, and you get all the time. So if I give you a general warranty deed, let's say you're buying my property called Green Acres. What I'm saying is, look, Winter, you're going to get Green Acres, and I promise you I'm giving good title, and I'm promising there won't be any negative encumbrances. But if there are any, I will clean it up. And
Okay.
if somebody comes along and says, it's not yours, I'm going to handle that. And it doesn't matter if this mistake or the defect in title was something that I did, something that occurred while I had it, or if it occurred from the previous owner, or if it occurred from the previous owner's previous owner. Like it doesn't matter when it is. I'm covering all of the title for it in its existence.
I just had a light bulb. So if
Yep.
the special is limited to the specific ownership of that person of the
Yep.
time they've owned the property, boom.
So
Okay.
it only covers the previous owner's time.
Okay.
And then we talked about a quick claim is just no claim, no
Yeah.
promises.
No promises. It just releases certain liens on the property, but it doesn't.
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, you can give property given a quick claim deed, but I mean, you're really doing basement bargain, like you don't know who else is gonna claim it. I don't
Yeah.
even know. And then you got a bargain and sale, which is really between the special warranty and the quick claim. At least the bargain and sale one is saying, look, I own it and it's yours. Quick
Okay.
claim isn't even saying that. So it's kind of just
It's like
I'm
a
gonna,
okay, I'm done kind of thing.
yeah, a basic sale is how I kind of think of it. And
Okay.
not all states use bargain and sale, but that kind of helps. Now we're
Awesome.
talking about deeds, but I think you understand why deeds are so important. Sometimes,
Yes.
I think sometimes, like, why is it important? Because, yeah, it's a deed. We ain't transferring any type of title without a deed.
Nope. No, ma'am. So it's very important.
Yeah. I'm just going to put,
Transfer of title.
duh,
Oh, you need to do
duh.
it.
All right. Ooh, powers of government. That's something we covered earlier. And you said, I'm going to put this under ownership. Now we're using some pretty big words, but if you get to words like hypothecation, I'm going to want you to know that has to do with finance. If you get a
Yeah.
word like extraterritorial jurisdiction, ETJs, my second favorite word in real estate, I would want you to know that has to do with like land use controls. So
Okay.
we're doing major words, but when you get to kind of those vocab words, you're like,
Um,
oh, I know I've seen it somewhere before. Having a category will help a lot.
okay. Awesome.
Right? You already told me the powers of government. You said you gave me Pete.
Yes. Police power is cheat, taxes, and eminent domain.
And I'm kind of relating these together. Police
Mhm.
powers are the powers that we have because we don't have feudal ownership. We have alloidial ownership. So some words I would say is, if I spell feudal right, feudal versus alloidial ownership. So, you know how I just said a second ago, this category is very helpful?
Mhm.
If we had had the word alloidio, even if you can't remember what alloidio means, if you could remember it has to do with ownership, that might help you not choose it or choose it for an answer choice.
Yes,
Getting what I'm
definitely.
saying there?
Yeah, you can already start eliminating
Yes.
those answers.
Now, do you know what feudal versus alloidio means?
I know I came across it. Is feudal is the is a government, a type of government power, right?
Yeah.
Basically, yeah. And then allodial is your single owner, not like single ownership, but like you yourself, individual. Yeah, thank you, individual.
So whenever I think of feudal ownership, I think of Robin Hood.
Yeah.
That was when there were, serfs working the land and you had people who had titles, like dukes and whatnot, and they would have the servants. And so in a feudal ownership, the king owns everything.
Hmm.
Like even if you were like a duke or somebody, the king still owned it. You were just that's the land that they're allowing to you to use. Which eventually England went over to
Hmm.
alloidial ownership, which is no, now the queen, or she's sorry, she's God rest her soul. The king doesn't own everything. Individuals can own land. So that's
Yes.
the different. Alloidial is that individual ownership. And so our four powers of government, police power, escheat, taxation, eminent domain. How do you feel about those definitions?
I feel pretty good. I once I learned the police power versus eminent domain requires the use of condemnation, correct?
Mhm.
So
Yes,
they need to be paid for their compensation of the property.
yes, they're taking. That
They're
is the
taking that
government
property.
taking the land.
Police power, you don't need to have that.
Well, think of it this way. Police power is like zoning. It's
Yes.
the idea that they can police what you can and can't do with your land. We
Okay.
know that with deep sea or with your bundle of rights, you get the right of control. That is
Yes.
in deep sea.
Disposition, exclusion. um, possession, and enjoyment.
Yep. So that control means you can do what you want with it. But are you going to be allowed to build a hazardous waste factory in your residential home?
No.
Because zoning's not going to allow you. Police power is the idea. Even though it's your land, they have
Hmm.
the right to tell you what you can and can't do with it to a certain point.
Yeah. Okay.
That's police power. So it's a power. Even though the government doesn't own the land, they can tell you what to do with it. Even though they
Okay.
don't own the land, they can tax it. Even though they
Okay.
don't own the land, they can take it and but still have to pay you for it. Even
Okay.
though they didn't own the land, if you die with no will and no heirs,
They
right?
can
You
just
die
keep the
intestate,
property.
they're going to get ownership of it. So the
Mhm.
powers of government means, hey, this is literally, even though we have alloidial ownership, here are the four powers the government still has over the land, even
Okay.
though it's not theirs.
Awesome. I love that. That really helps. Heck yeah.
Ooh, reliction. I think this is a good one for what I mean by category. So I will be impressed if you can tell me what category reliction is in. Or if you can even tell me what it is, I'll be impressed.
Oh, why do I know this one? But okay, reliction, we're gonna go um land use controls.
I wouldn't put it under a land use control, and here's why.
Okay,
And I'm just gonna write this out
that's okay.
here. Land use controls are about controls. And is it about this control either comes from the government or it comes from an individual, which is basically not the government. So it could be an individual, a developer, somebody like that.
Okay,
So this would be like zoning, right? That comes from the government.
okay,
CCNRs or restrictive covenants come from the developer or an HOA. That's a private source.
okay.
Make sense? I
Yes.
would say reliction has to do with ownership.
Dang. Okay.
And I'm going to say water. Does that help you with anything?
Is it the it's something to do like with the accretion, avulsion.
Yeah, there we
Yeah.
go. We got
Okay.
accretion, avulsion.
Is it the nat the addition to the land
It
by
is.
okay.
So accretion is adding,
And then
avulsion is
tearing
taking
away.
away,
Yeah.
erosion is taking away.
Yes.
This is slow. This is fast.
Mhm.
This is slow. And this is slow.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell you a funny story. When I think of religion, I think of my thirsty cat. Nobody said I could
Thirsty
talk.
cat.
So when I was like in my 30s, I had this cat, bless her little heart. And you ever meet a pet that just won't, just bless their hearts? They just,
That's all
all
you
you
gotta
can say
say.
is just bless
Bless
their
your
heart.
heart.
Like just bless their hearts.
Yeah.
So what would happen is I would have this, water bowl. And I was in my, maybe it was my 20s because I was pretty stupid. And I would let their water bowl get dry way too often. So sometimes what would happen is this cat would come and lick the water, and then the water would be gone. And she would continue to lick the bowl till it's dry. And then she keep licking. Like if I lick, maybe more water come. Like this is not like your mother's like, what are you doing? This is not
Yeah.
you suckling from your mother, okay? Like this not the more you lick. That's what I've told myself is she just didn't understand the water bowl was not her mother, you
Yeah.
know. But she kept thinking if I keep licking it, it's gonna
It's
get
gonna come
more
out.
water.
Yeah.
But that's why I think of reliction. It is the
Oh.
slow drying up of a water source. So in North Carolina, about 10 years ago, we had this huge drought. Like pretty waterful state. Like we got lots of water here. You
Yeah.
know, maybe not as much as where I'm from, Michigan, where we got the Great Lakes, but there's a good amount of water in North Carolina.
Mhm.
We had this huge drought, and people that had small ponds or had small streams in their backyards during the drought, it dried up
Oh.
and it never came back. So if you have land and this is your house, and let's say you had a pond and the pond never came back, then
Mhm. Just gain some land.
you gained land through reliction.
Hmm.
Does that
Cool.
help?
Yes.
So reliction is the gaining of land because it dried up, the water dried up.
Okay. The slow.
Accretion is the opposite of erosion. You
Okay.
know, erosion is what caused like the Grand Canyons, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Where did that land go? It had to go somewhere. So when you
Hmm.
gain land because it comes in from the water and then like settles, when you have land gain that way, that is accretion.
Okay.
And
The
avulsion
okay.
is the sudden one. Think earthquakes or like land tearing apart. Like that's
Yeah.
avulsion.
It took me so long to understand those like the differences between all of them. I kept
It's
getting
okay.
so confused, but yes, this is awesome.
Well, if you like the reliction because of the cat licking up, it's
Yeah.
such a silly one. Avulsion makes me think of throwing up, like you know that feeling right when you're getting ready to throw up, and you're like, "Whoa." And to me, it sounds like
Yeah.
avulsion, avulsion. Like it's just not a. If that helps you, and then you'll think of the
Yeah.
sudden tearing away of land,
A
and then if
sudden.
you can just think accretion and erosion are, you know, back and forth, adding and
Yeah.
subtracting.
Awesome.
Yay! All right, I think that was the last one I had for us
Yeah.
today. Did this help you?
So much. It was awesome
Yay!
getting because I was struggling with like finding the different categories and trying to place it because it was just so jumbled up in my brain. Like I have so it's a lot of knowledge, that you're
It
just trying to figure
is.
out where does it go kind of thing. And this it just helps you break it down.
Yes, that's why I call it. Now you get why I call it flashcards
Breakdown.
plus. Because it
Yeah,
is
literally.
flashcards,
Yeah,
but it's
because
more.
I would like even on the prep agent one, when you go on to the flashcards,
Hmm.
I love those. I love laying in my bed right before my exam, like because this will be my third time taking the exam. So fingers crossed on it. But I would go through them and read them. But this is just an elevated version. It just really helps you hone in those terms.
Yeah, it helps. I'm really hoping that it helps you, kind of like you were talking about in that 5 hour video. And she said, I feel like
Yeah.
I know a lot, but it's all kind of like everywhere in my head.
Yes.
And this
Hmm.
kind of helps you pull it together.
Yeah.
And then once you create the cards, like if you do it digitally, then you
Uh-huh.
could always come through and erase all this and start over. Or you could just re-download the file and fill it out again. Like it's all up to
Love
you.
this.
And that way, when you're looking at it, it's telling you before you start writing, or even if you take the ones you've already written on, do step number one, step number two, step number three, step number four before you flip it over and fill everything out and then find out what you know and what you don't know.
Hmm.
And then if you
Love
do
it.
fill them out, what you can do is now, I don't know if you handed this to somebody else, they would understand what was going on with all these pictures,
With just
but
a thirsty cat, and then they got the other cat over here.
they might go thirsty cat and you'd be like, oh, I know what it is. It's a
Yeah.
thirsty cat. So, and on your notes, don't be afraid to use pictures. Like these are your
Yeah.
flashcards. So if a picture or a story, like avulsion, if I
Yeah.
was going to pick like an importance, if the word had been avulsion, I always think of that poor man in Florida like 6 or 7 years ago. He was asleep in his bed, and then in the middle of the night, sinkhole. He was on land, died in the sinkhole. It was like huge sinkhole. His brother's house fell in. His brother was in there. They were able to get the brother out, but they didn't get him out. Like literally, next thing he knows, gone in the sinkhole. That's avulsion. So
That's
you might want to, in the importance, like why is it
yeah.
important? Hey, in some states, sinkholes are a thing you got to be aware of.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
dang. All
I know.
right.
I feel very
It-
sad for him.
Yeah, very, very sad. But
But
this was awesome. This helped a
oh,
lot.
good. I'm really hoping that his death is not in vain and that every time I tell a student that story, they remember a Volscian and another angel gets their wings. Or y'all pass the test. Either way. But I'm passing on his story. It's not for naught.
Yeah.
It's yay. All right, ma'am. Well, I'm so glad this helped. I'm going to just thank you so much. And I'm going to thank everybody in the future for you for letting me do this. I'm going to send you free a copy of these flashcards because
Thank
of the blank
you.
ones, you fill them in. And
Yes.
if you have any questions, you just reach out to me.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so very much. I appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.